At City Hall, we just wave at the red light.
Yeah, I think you're ready. We can't hear Mr. Clark, so.
Okay. All right, let me see, 7:06. Is everyone ready, board members?
Yep.
Mr. Gonzalez, okay. I'd like to call to order the regular governing board meeting of the Jefferson Elementary School District, September 9th, 2020 at 7:07 p.m. And can we get members present?
Leighton Koo,
Here.
Marie Brizuela,
Here.
Maybell Manio is absent. Manufo Leah Inga Anawai,
Here.
Shakil Ali.
Here. And this evening, we will actually ask Mr. Valenti to lead us in the pledge.
And come back on. How would everybody please rise? Cover your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Item number 4, at this time, the governance team will review the governance team meeting guidelines. Once everyone is ready, you can just give me a thumbs up.
About the guidelines?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to say something. No, well, that's all right. Go ahead. I want to instead of selecting them, I want all 4 of them.
All right.
And one of the reasons I'd like to propose eventually, not tonight, that we have those 4 as something that we will always, all of us, adhere to those 4 items.
Oh, I see. So instead of,
Foolish to say, well, which one do I want to pick? You know, but we should be doing all of those 4 things at every meeting all the time.
all
So
right,
why don't
so we can
Put on the next agenda to do that if you feel we can't do it now. But I think that we need to focus on those 4 items together as one. And that just is what our guidelines are going to be.
So would you like to make a motion or put this on a future agenda?
Does this actually give me the right to make that motion now?
No, we don't need a motion, Mr. Ali. I think what Mrs. Brizuela is saying that the guidelines are the guidelines for all of us for the whole meeting.
Right.
And you don't have to select one. We should be actually focusing on all of them, but sometimes one of us might want to personally just choose one because we know we struggle with it the most, but all 4
right.
would be fine.
Well, I'm going to struggle with this.
I
I'm
think
gonna
that's
make-
a good,
that we approve all 4 of these tonight.
This is not an action item, so we're not taking action. That's the spirit of what you are saying is always true.
Okay, in the spirit of what I think. I would like tonight for us to focus on all 4 of these.
all right, I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Are we
I
done with the-
motion. Oh, go ahead, Trustee Brizuela.
okay. No, I mean, we're not taking any action on this item. I mean, but you're all in agreement to look at all 4 of those?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's all. Then we can move on.
So I think I heard a motion or half of a motion.
I motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Item 6A, Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. The governing board of the Jefferson Elementary School District will hear public comments on the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. The Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan details how student learning continuity will be addressed during the COVID-19 crisis in the 2020 to 21 school year. The Learning Continuity Plan replaces the Local Control Accountability Plan for the 2020 to 21 school year. And we will start this public hearing at 7:12 p.m. And were there any cards submitted for this?
There were no speaker cards submitted for this item.
All right. Thank you. So we will end this public hearing at 7:13 p.m. Item number 7, communications. 7A, board member acknowledgements and commendations. And we will go ahead and start with Ms. Brizuela.
I don't have any acknowledgements, accommodations at this time. So I'm just going to pass on this one.
All right, thank you. Ms. Liana Anoa'i.
I have comments, not any acknowledgements or commendations that I want to make sure that people that are on the meeting here now. This is NHPI, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Census Week. So every day we have activities throughout the country, but more specifically here in California, there's been very intentional efforts to ensure that marginalized communities, and this week specifically the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community, who continues to get a low count, who continues to be low in voter registration, are letting their voices be heard. And I just want to encourage that spirit as we approach the September 30th deadline, because we know that this impacts us as a school district and as a community, that we need to be sure that we're counted. So I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I really want to commend everyone. I see a lot of, of our JESD community promoting census and making sure to get the word out. So I appreciate all the efforts in the community. Thank you.
And Trustee Koo.
I don't have much other than just kind of hoping that everybody is continuing to having a good start to the beginning of the school year. And I think the only thing I wanted to note was there's an election happening in 2 months. Just want to remind everybody to register to vote because things you vote on from the local all the way to federal level have impacts on our everyday lives. So just want to remind everybody to vote. You can do so at registertovote.ca.gov, and it only takes a minute to do so anytime.
Thanks. And let's see. I would like to commend the school district on the food distribution program and opening it up for minors who aren't even in our school district. And that is my only commendation for this evening. So now we'll move on to 7B, superintendent comments.
Yeah, I have a few brief comments. This last week, we might have seen a news release or two from the County Office of Education acknowledging that our school district was a party to 2 grants that were received. The first one was an early learning initiative grant that focused on inclusionary practices in the preschool grade levels. This is something that I know Dr. Adams and Ms. Zamiga worked closely with county office staff to ensure that we would be a part of that grant and that our teachers would get the professional development support that is needed to create an early learning inclusion environment. Second grant that we that promoted through news release this week was done with Ms. Stephanie Martinez and our Student Services Department. And this is about increasing mental health access and identification. And we are one of the 4 districts that get a greater portion of this this grant. All in all, there were 12 school districts that participated, but we are a major partner, and we'll learn more about those activities as the year progresses. Last week was elementary school back to school night. It was a really interesting experience to participate virtually. I was very impressed with our teachers and what they were able to do and how they were able to communicate with our students as well as our parents. This Thursday, tomorrow, is middle school back to school night, and I will again send out links to the board in case you would like to visit a back to school night for middle school. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And thanks for mentioning those 2 grants. I did notice that, and I want to echo the commendations that you gave.
I think you're muted, Mr. Ali, for some reason.
Yeah, I always say, can anybody hear me anymore?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. So at this time, we'll move on to 8A. You did hear me say that I wanted to echo your commendation. Okay.
Yes.
So 8A, general functions. Before we ask for a motion, would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Well, I had wanted to take off, because I thought you guys already did this, but 8B, 8C, because I feel that the definition or the comments we got back on whether or not resolutions should be starred items or not was not at all, it didn't suit me because it was a very vague comment that was like, well, it could or it couldn't, you know, that kind of thing. So I just would like to hold on that I will always, and they did, the county council did say anybody can take it off. So I'm just telling you now that when I see resolutions, I will take off the stars.
All right, so you would like to remove B and C from the consent agenda?
No, yeah, from the, in other words, to not be voting on it, yeah, as consent. That
Okay.
We should be looking at each of those items as a resolution.
All right, so does anyone want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing?
I think the county council already said that anybody can remove something from the consent agenda with no explanation and without a vote.
Oh, I'm not aware of that. Is that?
Yes,
Well-
any board member may remove an item off the consent agenda, so we can just approve whatever is remaining on consent.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bernie.
all right, so
I had President Ali, was it B as in boy and C as in cat? The B and
Correct.
C?
Mhm.
Okay.
okay. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with removed items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing items 8B and 8C from the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, unanimously approved. So item 8B, resolution number 20-0909A, excuse me, to excuse Maybell Manio from regular board meeting, August 26, 2020. Pursuant to Education Code 351209C, the board will consider a request for passage of a resolution to excuse Maybell Manio's absence on August 26, 2020 due to injury.
I would like to make a motion to approve resolution number 20-09-09A to excuse Maybell Manio from regular board meeting on August 26, 2020.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It is a resolution, so we should do a roll call.
Mr. Koo,
Aye.
Mrs. Brizuela,
Aye.
Miss Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Mr. Ali.
Aye. Unanimously approved. Item 8C, resolution number 20-09-09B, conflict of interest code. The administration recommends that the board adopt current resolution number 20-09-09B, conflict of interest code for the Jefferson Elementary School District, incorporating changes to the list of designated positions.
So, has the public been able to see, do they only get the agenda or do they see the backup?
Anybody can see the backup. It's open to the public.
But when you post it, is it there?
It is posted on our website, yes.
Okay. Then I think that we need to read the names or at least have the names included if we're not going to have it available for everyone to see.
Any member of the public can view the resolution in its full entirety.
It seems to me that if I would like to request that the names be visible on the agenda so nobody has to look for it to figure out who it is, I just would like that to happen.
Sorry, may I get some clarity? What names are we referring to?
There are no names in the resolution. There are positions listed for individuals within the district that need to submit a Form 700.
Okay, then if you don't want to put the names, then you can put the title of the position.
That's what we have in the resolution, as you see.
In the resolution, but not on the agenda item.
So is
I'm
this,
for transparency completely.
logistically, will we, if we follow that line of thought, will we have to now start disclosing everything that's on all of the resolutions? I'm not really sure what your request is regarding. Is it?
Right now, it's not saying what positions they are. If you don't want to put the names, you don't have to put names, but at least put the positions. I don't think that that's anything that I'm asking for something that's not appropriate.
So just for clarification, so is the ask then to not discuss this item at this time and make the change for a future agenda item, or moving forward, we can consider ensuring that resolutions put forth, Trustee Brizuela? Or is this something that you want to, because we can't change it now on the agenda, but I do want clarification on how you would like to move forward.
In the backup, I think it says in the backup.
It does, but it's not listed in the agenda as you would like it to be.
But on the agenda item, okay, all right. Don't put it on if you think that you don't agree with that.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I agree with you if it's something that we want to do moving forward. I'm just saying that it's not something, my understanding, you can correct me, Superintendent Vidalis, but I agree with what she's saying if that's something we want to do moving forward, but we can't change the agenda as of tonight.
Oh, no, that's correct. But I think her request is that we just read the designated positions that are included in the resolution, and I don't think that's a problem to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I agree with that. Thank you.
In the motion, I think it should be included because it's in our backup, but it should be part of the motion.
Yeah, there's about 10 positions there. If you would like, Mr. Ali, I can read them.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep, so the positions designated are governing board members, the superintendent of schools, the assistant superintendents, the director of fiscal services, the director of maintenance operations / construction programs, the personnel commissioners, the general manager of food service operations, the director of technology and curriculum integration, the director of special education, the information technology systems specialists.
Thank you. I'll second that motion. Was that a motion? No.
All right. So
That was
this is a resolution, so can we get a roll call?
I'm sorry, can I have clarity on the motion and and I guess Mrs. Brisbella seconded, but I don't know who made the motion.
So actually, I don't think there was a motion then.
No, I think we got into discussion. So I'll put down that I made the motion. Okay.
I'll second.
All right.
All
So
right.
now
The
we can.
motion was made by Trustee Brizuela, seconded by Trustee Anoa'i,
Yes.
and the motion is to approve the conflict of interest code with the new changes of the positions that were read.
It would be really clear if the motion includes what was read. We don't have to do that now, but I think our secretary can take it, our administrative assistant, would be able to look at that and include that. So, does that make sense?
Yes. All right, so are we ready for the roll call?
Yeah.
Mr. Koo,
Aye.
Mrs. Briswella,
Aye.
Miss Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Mr. Ali.
Aye. Unanimously approved. Item 9C, Educational and Student Services.
No, we still have item 8D, resolution.
Yeah, we sure do. So item 8D, resolution number 20-09-09C, resolution in support of Proposition 15. How could I forget this one? Schools and Communities First Funding Act, tax on commercial and industrial properties for education and local government funding initiative. As requested by a board member, the board will consider adoption of resolution number 20-09-09C, resolution in support of Proposition 15, Schools and Communities First Funding Act, a ballot measure in November 2020.
So I would like to say that I received calls on this item of the importance of us, approving it. So
Yes.
I wanted to say that it's something that was presented in such a way that there was different meanings, what they thought was going to go on. But I think we've got the clarification on it. So I think we can move on it. So I just wanted to say that it was an item that I had several calls on it. So.
I believe we have some speaker cards on this, Mr. Ali.
Yes. Mr. Koo, did you have some?
Yes, I have 4 speaker cards submitted for this item.
All right.
So the very first speaker, should I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. The first speaker is Kevin Owens, a teacher. I strongly urge you to vote in support of Proposition 15. This measure would have zero impact on homeowners, give a tax break to small businesses, and would not actually create any new taxes. Proposition would simply close tax loopholes and not actually create any new taxes. To vote for Prop 15 is a vote to support teachers, students, working people, and small business owners in California. To vote against Prop 15 is to stand with billionaires and Fortune 500 corporations such as Chevron and Disney, who utilize tax loopholes to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. By not paying their fair share of taxes, they have deprived the students of California of the education they deserve. Currently, California, the 5th largest economy in the world, 41st in the world, 41st state in California per people spending in the United States. This is shameful. Do not be convinced by Fox News and other conservative propaganda surrounding Prop 15. This measure will positively impact over 90% of the state, while forcing the wealthiest corporations to start paying their fair share. To vote against Prop 15 would be to turn your back on the students, families, and teachers of Daly City. Please vote to support Prop 15. Next speaker is Melinda Dart, retired teacher, co-chair of AFT 3267. Dear board members, thank you for considering this resolution in support of Proposition 15. As you are all aware, our schools are suffering from the lack of funds at the time when we most need help to deal with the effects of the pandemic. Prop 15 would provide new funding for every school district in California, protect us from healthcare emergencies, and reduce homelessness in the state. Prop 15 reclaims $12 billion per year for schools, community colleges, and vital services in our state by asking the richest corporations to pay their fair share. Renters, homeowners, and small businesses will not be affected. Thank you for standing with teachers and community members in support of Prop 15. Next speaker is Anusha Takla, teacher. Dear trustees of the JESD, as leaders responsible for the solvency and well-being of our Jefferson Elementary School District community, I strongly urge you to pass the resolution being proposed tonight to endorse Prop 15, put schools and communities first. A yes vote would mean Prop 15 will reclaim $12 billion to invest in schools and services for our local communities. The richest 10% of corporate properties will provide 92% of the revenue. Prop 15 will maintain full Prop 13 protections for homeowners, renters, and agricultural lands. For too many years, large corporations have profited from a property tax loophole resulting in lack of funding for our schools and services in our communities. Working people and small businesses have been burdened with providing more funding for our schools. It's time to change that now. As leaders and decision makers for our schools, you are all well aware of our budget shortfalls. It makes sense that you support Prop 15. Thank you, Anusha Takla.
I received also from Anushka that we can speak on this. She wanted to ask me, she has a speaker card for tonight's meeting. So yes, I did look into all this, and it's something that I very much think we need to support. And I think that some of the folks were thinking that it would take away from Prop 13, but we're being told, no, it will not. And it will enhance the schools and have the money, go to them, and that it won't be going to big corporations. So just wanted to add that too. And I want to thank her for also communicating to me as well on this.
Mr. Koo, you have one more speaker card?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
The last speaker is Paul Hagan, teacher and president of AFT 3267. Dear JESD School Board, I was extremely pleased to see this item on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Our members, along with thousands of other California educators and community members, worked hard to qualify the schools and community first initiative for this November's ballot. I'm proud that our school board is willing to consider this resolution in support of Prop 15, the schools and communities proposition. However, placing the resolution on the agenda is only a step in the right direction. It means nothing if you do not approve the resolution. I can only assure that a failure to vote in favor of the resolution in support of Prop 15 would indicate a lack of support for the proposition itself. Estimates show that Prop 15 will bring $9,944,706 into our school district alone, and $9,934,000 to Daly City. Why would anyone pledge to support our children and our community by not supporting Prop 15? I can only figure that such a failure to support this proposition has to be based on false information. Let's be clear. This proposition is not going to raise residential property taxes. This proposition is not going to affect homeowners and renters. This proposition will not raise property taxes for small businesses. Who is spreading this misinformation? Who is spending millions of dollars to defeat Prop 15? Big corporations, property owners who have been using tax loopholes to avoid paying their fair share of property taxes for decades do not want this proposition to pass. They don't want to see their free ride come to an end. I'm talking about huge corporations like Chevron and Disney Corporation, corporations that don't even need the tax protections that they are spending millions to maintain. It's time that they pay their fair share. I'm counting on all of you to vote in favor of this resolution before you. Your obligation to support our students, our schools, and our community compels you to do so. Paul Hagan, proud president of AFT 3267 and Union of Professionals. And President Ali, that is the last speaker card on this topic.
All right, thanks very much. And Ms. Anoa'i, did you have anything to say, or Mr. Koo? I know we've heard from Ms. Brizuela.
Oh, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. I think many of us on the board have taken a stance on this as individuals as well as public officials. I love that I've been seeing people active in the phone banking that's been happening too. And I know that I've been participating. I have family members that I've engaged to participate. I see that many of you are doing that, and I think it's wonderful. That alone speaks volumes to the action that is needed. We are all well aware of the budget shortfalls that we see and are going to continue to see during these unfortunate times. So I'm in full support of this resolution. I appreciate Trustee Brizuela's advocacy, and I appreciate the support that we're getting from the community and ensuring that they're heard. I'm in full support of this resolution, and I look forward to the passage of it. And I hope that we can continue to band together to raise our voices to get it through.
All right, thanks. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Koo?
I just wanted to say that I think at first when it was being introduced, people thought they were going to lose the Prop 13 that was given for protections for homeowners, especially now at a time when that passed originally. Now those homeowners are senior citizens, and they were afraid that something would happen and they would have to pay a lot more taxes. But it's been reassured that that is not going to happen. Okay, so for that, this is important that we pass it, and we need to get the money to us and not to big corporations. And they're the ones, Disney, I hate to say it, as much money as many things they have going for them, pay the less taxes of anybody. So, why can't we do that, have the reverse where the schools get the money, because those children are the ones that are going to spend their money later on at Disney. So I'll get off my bandwagon.
Mr. Koo, did you have any deliberation or?
Yeah, I want to echo what everyone's saying so far. I think passing Prop 15 is extremely important for our school district and just in general for our state. I think just sort of closing that tax loophole will provide millions and millions of dollars for our school district, our communities, our city. And I think in many ways that will help provide and fill in a lot of that void that might be incoming, especially regarding sort of the upcoming budget in 2021, impacts from COVID-19, and sort of other impacts along the way. So I think passing Prop 15 is an extremely important step, and I fully support
it. And
how does one get a sign to put in front of your house to say vote for it?
So I just want to mention the fact that really the first that I heard of this loophole was actually from Ms. Kessler. I believe it was a few years ago. She was ahead of her time when she brought this up and brought it to our attention. So I'm not sure who was afraid of this, but we've known for at least a few years that this is an action that needed to be taken. So
yeah.
I want to commend Ms. Kessler for bringing this to our attention, like I said, a few years ago, and I'm ready to move forward. So do we have a motion?
Ms. Brizuela, did you want to make the motion?
Yes, definitely I do. I just lost my place for a minute. Hold on. Okay, so it's resolution 2009-093 in support of Proposition 15, schools and communities first. I'll make a motion that we approve this item.
Second.
And can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Koo,
Aye.
Mrs. Brizuela,
Yes.
Miss Leah Inga Anuai,
Yes.
and Mr. Ali.
Aye. Unanimously approved.
Yay.
Good job, everyone. Item 9C. Excuse me. Update on district initiatives supporting safe and supportive schools. Educational and student services staff will present how JESD is creating safe and supportive school environments in our district, addressing issues of equity, racism, bullying, and other discriminatory behaviors.
Yeah, so I'd like to invite Ms. Stephanie Martinez to come forward and share her screen, or somebody share the screen. Ms. Stephanie Martinez, Dr. Heidi Joyner, and one of our partners from Circle Up, Ms. Tiffany Wang, are going to be here to share with you our district efforts in this area.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Nice to-
Evening.
Even though it's virtual, it's so crazy to me.
Stephanie, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure we have the right presentation. Can I share my screen?
I just don't want it to be the
Okay.
this is
Huh?
something, I've been working on, so hopefully it doesn't mess me up too much. Could I just at least get you my screen and then we'll go to yours? Is that okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome to Tiffany. I realize that Tiffany's been working with us for 6 years now, and Tyrone from Circle Up, but we've never invited them to come in person. And so I thought tonight would be a great opportunity for you to meet her. And she's part of the organization, but definitely has been in the work with us, in the schools alongside us, with all that we've been able to accomplish over the years. And it's been, challenges have arose, and Circle Up has always been there to consult and give advice, and it's been really supportive. And I know that you guys are aware too, or have heard, that Circle Up is also, after their work with us, also started to join in at the high school district, Pacifica district, and Bayshore district, because a vision of mine was to really coordinate and approach this as a community, as a region, not just in the elementary school. So it's been really great to partner with her and to have surrounding districts work and fight, stand against the things that we're going to talk about today. So I just wanted to give a little bit of history, context to all the work and the partnership that we have being coordinated currently in our region. And most of you were sitting on the board when I first started my role as program director of student services in 2015. And I was very fortunate to start this role and have the support of Melinda Dart, who was, on a speaker card, who's been, working in our district tirelessly for a lot of things, for the right thing. So I remember my first year and her coming to me and me really feeling her passion and getting the support from you, but also getting the support from Bernie and Sandy, and really having that leverage what the work was going to be and what it was going to be about. And it wasn't just about Princeton. And you guys have seen that over the years, right? So I just wanted to remind us that this has stuck with me since my first year, and I've never forgotten it. And I just tried to really make it concise, as well as just identify some actions that you charged me to facilitate. And I'm happy to say that after reading it, I hadn't looked at it until this year. For a little while, we've been doing really well with the actions that we charged us to do around Black Lives Matter, but also around other injustices that do occur in the community and feed into the schools, really disrupting the prison to pipeline that happens from schools. And we really have been talking and having hard conversations since I started this role. So I wanted to just revisit that. So I know specifically you guys wanted to know, what do we do specifically around racism and discrimination? What happens in our schools? And just to let you know, I wanted to give some history and context. We've been working on this. I've been working on this. But this year, we've also joined the momentum and the actions that are happening locally. And just so you're aware, there is a community collaboration that's occurring once a month, and I was invited to participate in it. And I also had one of our administrators, Jared Burke from FDR, join me, so that at least one of us is at the meeting, ensuring that our representation is there, but also that we're a part of the community work and not just at the school. A couple of forums that have been organized with me are our equity and social justice collaboration. And these are partners that are from the executive board that also work in our leadership team in Partners in Education. And so we've been really looking at data, we've been looking at the community actions, and we've been having short conversations over the course of the month. But I wanted to let you know that we really wanted to focus and not lose momentum around the awareness that has been brought to the nation, to our community. And we don't want to lose that. And we don't want to lose sight of that with all the other initiatives and, things that we're organizing, right now. So we're committed to meeting at least once a month. So we've been doing that since last month. We've actually met 3 times. And we continue to try to organize ourselves. Another committee that's working tirelessly, something that you passed and that you've been encouraging us to do, has been our Ethnic Studies Committee, really working on creating curriculum. And our hope is that we'll have K-8 curriculum that eliminates racism and other forms of oppression, but also allows the schools to really create space for any identity, any student, any student participation, and really engage students to be themselves and creating a safe space to be themselves, and also taking action when there is something that happens at the school. So curriculum is really important. And when we look at things that have happened, if there was education, if there was relationships, some of those things could have been, avoided in our schools. Some of those conflicts could have been resolved if there was that prior work done. And so I'm really happy that you guys have identified this with us and that we're working hard. And I have to give more credit to the teachers because they're doing all of the work. At the site level, every year, Tiffany and I and Tyrone from Circle Up, as well as other partners, we organize professional development at the district level, as well as at the site level. Now, every site is different and has different needs. And so I realized that, and every site has different situations that occur. So every year, the sites are allowed to coordinate and plan their own PD with Circle Up with these specific topics in mind. Something that I lead at the sites and at the district is our practices. We have tiered system approaches. We try to really uncover behavior. We look at data and we educate around where behavior is actually coming from so that we're not being punitive. We're coming with compassion and understanding and or seeking to understand what happened, what went wrong. And then we also reflect. A huge part of this work is reflection. What did we miss? What are we not doing? What needs to be in place? How could this have been avoided? That's a daily practice of mine, but it's also a common practice of a lot of folks that are in this work with me. And our responses, we always have to respond. We always do respond, and responses can look differently, but the urgency to respond is there. And so we always have a tiered system of response depending on the level of the situation. And I know this is pretty general, but I'm going to get into more specifics. But I just wanted to let you know in 2020, we're not forgetting what we're doing, but we're also leveraging up on the things that are happening in the community so that, like I said in the beginning, that we're really working on this as a larger community, not just at the school. So over the course of our implementation of PBIS, we've also tried to work through what is a system to approach incidents. How can we make sure that we're really finding out what we need to find out? And what we're trying to establish for long term is creating this process where we assess, we respond, because it's really important that we respond right away. But then we do a lot of work uncovering. Like I was mentioning, well, what happened? What was going on? What was the intention? Is there a history of this behavior in a student or with certain students, between students? And how can we prevent it? How can we make sure that we're doing everything that we can to prevent any student from experiencing a racial slur or discrimination or anything that makes them feel like they, can't be who they are? So it starts out with our administrators. If the incident occurs, they usually involve whoever needs to be involved, and I listed that out. And we really ask, very curious questions to get a deeper understanding in the context of the situation. But ultimately, when we go into response and reentry, our goal is to restore safety, restore community relationships, and to correct the behavior or the correct perceptions that have occurred to cause this incident. And then again, the uncover and the prevention, what did we miss? How can we reevaluate our systems? How can we implement revisions on something we thought was going to work, but it didn't? And how can we implement additional training if we have a site that has, 5 more staff that are onboarded? How can we really support those staff members to have the skills, have the knowledge of their peers and their colleagues? And so we really try to think deeply about prevention, because I think that that's oftentimes something that gets, lost because you get busy with other things. But that's something that I really try to focus on, so that we're really creating, systems that work and systems that respond and systems that create change. I'm going to let Tiffany chime in on this part. This is a part of the practices. So what I just covered, really how we assess incidents. If it seems like the students are willing to come together, are willing to rework and re-engage with one another and repair their relationships, we do try to utilize restorative practices as much as possible, as long as it doesn't harm anybody further. That's a very big mistake that happens in other schools and districts, is that they use restorative practices when people don't want to be restorative. And that is not the purpose of it. But when it is, because of all the work that we've done with investigation, an appropriate response, this is the process that we've trained our admin on. So Tiffany, I'll let you share.
Yeah, so this is a conflict resolution framework, and even though this is in general related to conflict and incidences, really we built this framework out of the work that we did and started with JESD, which was, first training the admin on the implicit biases, unconscious forms of discrimination, how to call people in when, a staff member, community member is unconsciously being discriminatory, and then how to address those conflicts, and then most of all, how to prevent them in the first place. And so what this kind of image and this visual depicts is the framework around how those practices are held, right? Is that like with any system, like it needs a structure to be supported and sustained. And so the very first kind of area, this with a black step, is the conflict prevention, right? With especially talking about racism and discrimination at the elementary school level, with most students, it's like they're repeating things that they heard from TV or they learned from their parents, and they're saying it and they're frustrated and they know the things that might hurt another student. So they're specifically calling out like somebody's skin color or their hair. And the prevention, it has been a lot around like, how do we build in practices in the classroom where students can get to know each other, learn and talk about their differences, where it's not something that's odd or different, but really something to be proud of. And at the same time, conflict prevention in this sense is also how do we train staff around being aware of their implicit biases and being aware of the racism that is perpetuating in the exact school system. But even despite a lot of our training work and awareness building and skills, like conflict happens anyway. And people are calling Stephanie and they're like, this is happening, help, what do I do? I have a fire, and they need help putting that out. And so the next step is the assessment, which is the phase or the step that is often missed when a racist incident or discriminatory incident happens, because people could automatically be like, oh, that's not okay. We need to address that. You're wrong, you're bad. But when we assess, we have to assess, well, where is it coming from? Is it coming from a malicious place? Are they intentionally trying to cause harm? Or was the student upset about something else and saying something that they just knew was wrong or bad? And in that case, we need to do some education. Or if there's an unconscious or implicit bias, then we address that differently as opposed to when it's an explicit bias. And then we respond based on who was harmed and how we need to address it and what's within our policies. Stephanie talked a lot about the reentry and also the reparation, the repair after incident has happened. How do we bring people together if that is something that is wanted, or if somebody says something or does something and it impacts the whole entire community, how do we have a conversation about it to ensure it doesn't happen again and people can feel safe to come back into the community or the environment?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So current challenges, this is not just in Daly City, this is everywhere, but we do have an emphasis on response. So sometimes we just get caught up in responding and taking action, where we need to focus also on figuring out what needs to happen further, and where change needs to happen, and where maybe there needs to be more focus on adult support and support, or family support, or family education, or student education, or staff education. So sometimes we get busy with just responding, and it's really important that we also focus on the things mentioned in previous slides. Engaging with families. It can sometimes be a challenge to engage with families after an incident occurs. There's a lot of focus on the harm that has been done, which I don't discount and I can definitely empathize with. But sometimes there are family belief systems that are not meeting the school belief systems. And that could be a challenge for school officials to have those conversations when there are, there's not a lot that we can control sometimes outside of our walls. So that can pose challenges. And these are real life challenges. There's also social pressures. As you're all children yourself at some day, and you all have, you're strongly connected, have children currently in schools or working in schools. There are a lot of social pressures for students to continue the conflict. It is in the culture of the generation to watch videos of harm, or to watch put downs, or to laugh at things like conflict and put downs. And it's really unfortunate. And that is something that we face challenges to change. And so sometimes if we don't do the good work in the first place of building relationships that matter to students, then when they come back to school and they're pressured to re-engage in conflict, even after agreements have been made, they face a huge social pressure to re-engage. And so we also sometimes have to navigate through that as well. After we've done all the work, we sometimes have to go back and do it again because we realize that it wasn't strong enough to support the agreements. The school systems and relationships weren't strong enough to support the agreements made. And we do need more input from students. So one of the things that we're working on at the district level with the committee that I mentioned before is looking at our survey and our data and trying to come up with questions that specifically ask about student experience and that give even our elementary students a voice in what we do and how we address things and what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And so that's something that I want to do regardless of the times this year. I still want that to happen. So we're going to gain more input, gather more input from students. And sometimes it can be very uncomfortable to have these conversations. And I realize that not everybody has been faced with experiences or faced with having these conversations directly. And so I understand that we need trainings, we need to prepare folks with tools. All staff, not just admin or counselors, but all staff. And so those are some challenges that we've come across in our work. And what more can we do? So every, other month, I would say I reconnect, or sometimes monthly, with all of the people that I work closely with, or providers that are doing professional development and trainings with me. And we evaluate what can we do to prevent and how can we respond. But some of the things I want to highlight for this presentation specifically is, how are we responding to the needs that we're seeing? We're trying to create really thoughtful trainings to onboard new staff. And so they're entering our schools with the knowledge and foundational skills to address this as new teachers, reviewing HR policies and providing training. So we want to really, this needs to continue to remain in this position, or continue to have for staff. And also to ensure that our board policies are updated, right? And we look at our resumes, that we're updating, we make sure that we're directly addressing and having actions in there to disrupt racism in schools. And then Tiffany, you can talk a little bit about the prevention piece.
Yeah, so as me and Stephanie were just preparing for this presentation, and kind of thinking through about racism, and I was asking Stephanie, I was like, what types of incidences do exist? And she's like, there's not that many, but but they exist. And so we are talking about, what is in place, and Stephanie already kind of spoke to this, but I was like, talking about racism is not easy, and how to facilitate that with kids, and how do we do that together? Because Stephanie brought up a good point, which is like, there's a lot of fear around this if we take this on as a district, around like, where is it going to kind of leach into, or how might parents or families feel about that? Will it feel like we're kind of crossing over political lines? But at the same time, when we dug deeper, we were like, at the root of it though, when we're talking about racism, like especially at the elementary school level, it's really about how students are treating each other and how their teachers are seeing them. And so, this was something that we were really thinking about, like, how can we make this happen and make talking about race and racism easier, give them tools and a framework to do it, because we've done it with other districts and it's happening, but it also requires for everybody to be on the same page, especially at the board level, the district administrative level, to be like, teacher, we're expecting you to talk about race and racism, and we have your back. We have your back. We know it's going to be bumpy. It might not be perfect. Things will come up, but it's important because things are happening right now, and they're going to continue to. And so not only thinking about how to equip teachers on race, how to have conversations about race and racism, but also how do we get kind of the families and community involved around kind of our values. I mean, we know them at JESD, but how do we communicate them in this current context? What does that mean? How are we going to respond? What can they expect? Student voice, absolutely. Just thinking about what they see and experience in regards to in the classroom with staff, and out in the community. What tools do they need? How do they communicate their needs or what they're seeing, or how do they report things if they need to, and training for admin that is sustainable. So we did we invested a lot of time, I think, in our first 2 or 3 years, providing training during AC. And we've continued that every August. We do kind of a refresher training with new employees, counselors, admin, and people at the district. And that's helped to set a foundation, but how can we just continue the ongoing discussion so that it is fresh and relevant in people's minds? Did I cover everything, Stephanie?
You did.
Okay, cool.
All right, and we're going to pass it over. We're staying for questions, obviously. We're going to pass it over to Heidi.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. So good evening, everyone. So just to add to what the work that Stephanie and Tiffany and Circle Up have been doing, my discussion will be more focused around what we've been doing with leadership. And so just to bring us into the space of what's been going on in the world currently, we're all extremely stressed out around this pandemic and just the social unrest that's been happening in the world. And this isn't new, but it just seems like it's all just coming to a head right now, and there's too many things going on. And so the world is stressed out, and so our community is a microcosm of the world. So I can be assured that there are people in our community that are stressed out. And there are families who are facing a lot of what is happening around the world. They are experiencing those same types of issues within our community and outside of our community. And so just thinking about how do we allow for a space to have conversation and to provide support and hope for those people, those families, those students, those staff members who are living with these experiences, or who may just be watching and witnessing these experiences and don't know what to say or how to feel about it. And so last year, we started on a focus around equity. And I know that this has been happening for years in different ways, but we explicitly called it out last year. And we started working with the leadership and different groups in the district. So we have some counselors who've attended some meetings and some teachers who've attended some meetings. But our primary focus was to work with the district leadership so that then our district leadership at the sites can then start working with their staff. And so our focus on equity, we came to the table with a working definition of equity. This does not mean that this definition cannot be changed, but we came with a working definition, and our definition states that we believe that all students should be provided with the resources necessary to attain access to a quality education and opportunity to advance to college or career, entrenched in the notion of parity in educational outcomes, grounded in data to close the opportunity gap. And so we brought this definition. We hired some consultants from the county office, and myself and the other two consultants began to work with our district leadership around this definition and what that looks like in our school sites and what that looks like with respect to our policies, practices, and procedures, and to really think about how we are looking at equity, how we are making decisions grounded in equity. And so just a little overview, we started a book study with our district leadership, and we engaged in a book study, and the book is entitled Shattering Inequities. We read the chapters of the book and we discussed what was going on as it relates to our own district. And in this book, they highlight various school districts and their focus areas in terms of equity, what they did to make changes and what the issues were. And so we looked at these different school districts and related to what we were currently doing or issues within our district or anything that we saw, and had conversations around them. And they gave suggestions on how to make these changes. And we did talk about many of those suggestions and how we as JESD can start looking at our policies, practices, and procedures and making changes. And again, we contracted with the county office to assist us in looking at this work. And we also worked with our leadership, instructional leadership teams to bring in the conversation with some teachers to see how they're feeling about it and to provide them a voice from the site level to see how they can make those changes at the sites as well. We also contracted with the National Equity Project. And the National Equity Project is a group out of Oakland. They provide leadership training focused around equity. And so we brought them in and they worked with our leadership team as well as a few counselors and a few teachers around instructional coaching. And so they came monthly until the pandemic began, and looked at classroom practice, procedure, and policies, and how to coach teachers and students around equity within the classroom. And again, once COVID hit, we couldn't finish working with them. And so we do have a few sessions that we are trying to line up for the remainder of this year. They did, however, start the school year with us to re-engage us in the conversations around equity. And given where we are right now with the pandemic and how we are teaching and learning, they really grounded us to help us remember, while we're still in this pandemic, we still need to think about our students and their experiences from an equitable standpoint and how we can support them through what's going on, but to keep clear that equity is the through line in everything that we do. So we will continue working with the National Equity Project, and we will continue working around equity, looking at our policies, practices, and procedures to really interrogate where we can make changes and where we can highlight the good work that we're doing, which tonight, Stephanie and Tiffany are highlighting that work. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks very much. As usual, I have a lot to say on this topic, but I'll let my colleagues go first. Any board member who wants to ask any question, now's your time. So if there's no questions.
I think Ms. Brizuela is trying to talk. She needs to be unmuted.
Oh, no.
*6 on your phone.
I think I just unmuted her. I think she should be.
It looks like she's connected on her phone for audio.
Yeah, that's true. So, Mrs. Brizuela, that was a *6.
There we go.
All right, thank you. I felt so bad. I couldn't say nothing. So I'm very happy to hear all of this, and I'm looking forward to us growing on it, making it where we can go into a classroom and feel that every single child cares. That's what it's all about, caring for each other. And I think we can get that done. But thank you so much for what you guys told us.
Thank you.
I was excited to see this on the agenda. I have to say President Ali was one of the first persons that came to my mind, because I know that when I came on the board, these were conversations we had walking into meetings and walking out of meetings. And the fact that we as a district can really start to look at how we integrate this into our everyday learning in the classroom, because a lot of times these are the taboo, untouched topics that get talked about outside of the classroom or at home, and or the inability to teach our students how to have these discussions safely. So this means a lot to me, to know that my child, when she was at MP Brown, she had so many experiences that she struggled with, but she had such a strong teacher, Mr. Deutsch, who I adore, who I love that he's still there, because I hope that we can continue to keep him and all the great teachers that are empowered to do this work that we have now have the ability to formalize. That's the thing. We've never formalized this into our learning institution. And we're being very intentional, ensuring that we're doing this work. We're not just talking about it anymore. We're saying we're going to do it, and we're going to continue to tweak it and get it right. So to hear all that you've shared this evening means so much to me as a board member and a parent. you know, and to hear the leadership and all that's going into. I love hearing that the onboarding is happening, the refreshers are happening. I love to see that intentionality, because the refreshers are key. We get overwhelmed, and the refreshers are key to remind us of the systems that we're trying to get rid of that don't work, that haven't worked. So I just want to say thank you and commend you all for the great work that is happening, and that the board can continue to support all of your efforts. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool, I see you.
I was just going to say thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's extremely just great to hear all the updates that you guys have done over the past year, sort of internally, as well as with all of our schools and our school sites. Because I think it's really important, especially the work that we've done behind the scenes, but also stuff that's actually going to be coming into face-to-face interaction with our school teachers, students, and the community. So I think it's really valuable and really important. And I just really want to say thank you for all the work, and look forward to seeing what we can do this coming school year, even amidst unusual times. Just really thank you.
So, can I say something? Okay. I just wanted to say that being on the school board as long as I've been, since I was 2 years old, I'm just kidding, we have had many programs that we've tried to bring to our students. This is not new. We have done it. And so, I remember the one that came around, and it was "Don't Laugh at Me." And it didn't matter of your color, your race, your nationality. It was about "Don't laugh at me," period. Whatever it is, whether you couldn't walk, whatever the issue, handicapped people, anything. So we had all these people come in, and they did little plays, and they did everything. And then one day, one of the kids made fun of somebody, forgot himself, and all the other children came around and surrounded the child that he was making fun of. And that really told me that those children learned their lesson of what to do. If we can stick up for each other, if we can tell children to stand by somebody who someone's making fun of, that means so much more. That gives them so much support. So there's many ways to do this, and I think we've been doing different things from time to time. The more we do, the better we get at it. But I just think we need to let people know you don't make fun, or you don't criticize somebody, whether they're wearing glasses. My poor brother was called Four Eyes because he wore glasses when he was a little tiny kid. Whatever you say to a child is going to be hurtful. So if we can get that in place, with everything else rolls together, it will roll together. We have to make sure that everybody cares for everyone, and teach our children who aren't getting called names or ignored to help them, to stand up for that child. If we can do that, I think we've solved a lot of problems. But thank you so much for everything that you're bringing. The more we bring in, the better we're going to be. So thank you. I get excited about that.
All right, thanks. So I'm not going to take up much more time, but I just want to say I'm really, this presentation actually went beyond what I thought it would be, which is surprising, huh? Because I know your capabilities, but I really wanted to know, and I wanted the community to know that we, besides just having tier 1 and universal practices, and wanting everyone to feel safe and welcome, that we weren't afraid to actually talk about racism, though, specifically, just because of the state of the national, issues that are happening, and even international. So thanks for having this courageous conversation. And I think this is just the beginning, really, because as Ms. Anaya said, we're actually now taking it out of just abstract and as something that's just social emotional learning, but applying it to the curriculum inside of the classroom as well with ethnic studies. So this is a great time to be a part of our district and keep pushing the envelope. And I really liked also hearing just the balance between restoration and correction. So, and I think that's the main point why people are afraid to talk about racism, because we all know that there needs to be restoration, but the correction needs to be there as well. We can't just turn our heads when some, a racist act happens in the schools because it's uncomfortable to talk about it, or maybe we don't know what to say, right? So I think we're doing a good job by having actual practices and I'm sure that's there. So thank you for your great work, and looking forward to the next update.
Mr. Ali, if you allow me, I just want to add a bit to the comments.
Yes.
I appreciate very much the role of the board in this and in setting this direction and maintaining this direction. This is something, as acknowledged by Ms. Brizuela, that is not new, and this work that we currently do builds upon years and years of other work. One of the things that I would appreciate, the board role in this is the board are members of our community. And so you're the eyes and the ears of what's happening in our community. And so as you share those with administration and with staff, we can begin to craft our approaches and our responses and movements in response to that. We're aware of much, but we're not aware as much as you are. So we really do need the board to be those eyes and ears. Secondly, it would help, the board can also help to communicate to the community at large that these issues are not solved with one conference and one discussion, and tomorrow everything is good and there is no more racism. The issue of racism is long-standing, probably as long as Cain and Abel, and has infected every single culture in our world. And in a community like Daly City, which represents many different ethnicities and cultures, we experience it from a variety of places. And we just need to have a greater understanding that this is ongoing work, and we cannot undo millennia of behavior and beliefs in 1 week of instruction. We can only make movements a bit at a time, and we hope we can change one student's life and one student's approach. That's better than nothing. If we can do a whole classroom, that is wonderful. A whole school is even our goal, and our whole district would be amazing. But we know that we work against the tide in this, and the river rushes hard and we're swimming upstream. We also know that any given year we get between 700 and 900 new students in our district that may not have benefited from any efforts we've done in the past. And so we sort of have to start over. And they come in at all different grade levels. They don't always just come in kindergarten. That would be great. They come in as 5th graders and 8th graders. And so we need to address new work with them when they've not been a part of our community since the beginning. So this is ongoing work. It is hard work. It is work that our staff will not give up on as long as we have the support of our board. And I do believe and wish, encourage the board to continually support this work, and even saying the word racism is something that 5 or 10 years ago we were not as free to say, and I think it still does strike a chord for many people when they hear that word to get defensive. But it is something that we just have to acknowledge exists and need to work with its existence and try to dismantle it and try to create a different reality, even if it's just for one person. So thank you for your support. Thank you for the ways that you've provided direction in this, and the many years of work that have happened, and how we've been able to just build on that in recent years.
Well, I'd like to take a moment, though, to say I'd like to thank our teachers who probably see it daily, and how they're able to try to bring all those children together. It's not easy. It's a hard job to do, but a lot of them are already in tune to it. You can see by the playground that they're playing together with the different students. but it's probably the parents that we have to make sure we're reaching out to, because the children learn from the parents, unfortunately. So thank you for all of this tonight. I really appreciate it.
All right, well, thanks everyone. If there's no questions or any other accolades, we'll give our last thank yous to you for this evening. Good seeing you, both of you.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, really appreciate all of your dedication, and I could just see like the tears like coming out of your eyes as we're all talking about this, because it's such a deep topic, and you know, especially with JESD, like this work started a long time ago, but like Bernie said, it's ongoing, it's deepening, it's expanding, and Marie, what you just said, if we could just change one life, like that's why we're here. So thank you all for that reminder this evening.
All right. So now that we've set the tone, we get to move into business.
Money.
Business and financial procedures. This is how we pay for it all the services. So 10B, Board Resolution number 20-09-09, Appropriations, GAN Limit. The administration recommends approval of resolution number 20-09-09 for the annual appropriations GAN limit for fiscal year 2019 to 20, actuals and fiscal year 2020 to 21 estimates.
Okay, so this is a routine item that we do each year, and we have never exceeded the GAN limit since I've been at the district. It's not an easy thing to exceed. And so what you're approving is the ongoing limit that we are already meeting. We're not going over it. So that's it. If there's any questions about it, I can try to answer for you.
All right. It doesn't look like there's a question. So do we have a motion?
Go ahead. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 20-09-09 for the annual appropriations GAN limit for fiscal year 2019-2020 actuals and fiscal year 2020-21 estimate as stated.
I'll second the motion.
All right, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Koo?
Aye.
Mrs. Brizuela?
Aye.
Miss Leah Inga Anawai?
Aye.
Mr. Ali?
Aye, unanimously approved. Item 10C, fiscal year 2019 to 20 unaudited actuals. The administration recommends approval of the unaudited actuals for fiscal year 2019 to 20.
Okay, I have a presentation for you here. Okay.
All right.
All right. I'm assuming everybody can see that now?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So, I'm trying to, okay, here we go. I need to move your pictures to the side here. All right, so another year is closed. Last year, we finally closed the books this summer. So what you're going to see here are the financial records of the district from July 1st, 2019 through all the transactions through June 30th, 2020. Boards are required to approve this by September 15th each year. They will then be audited by our auditors and then go to the state no later than December 15th, and then they will come to you for final approval either in December or January of this year. All right, I'm trying to advance. Okay, right down here maybe. All right. So this is what I'm sorry, I can't see the whole screen. And it's not going to allow me to see it. That's okay. So this is each of the funds that we have and the transactions. So this is a beginning balance for the year. These are all the revenues, the expenditures, and this is the end balance for each of these funds. And this is what it was at first interim, and at the closing here, that's the area that I can't see anymore, unfortunately. But I'll be going over the general fund. And as you can see, we have a $9 million end fund balance. So for the general fund, unrestricted, we had revenues of 51 million and expenditures of 50 million. So we have a surplus of 757,000. Sounds really great, but there are reasons for that you'll see. So which helps us add to our fund balance. We started out 8.8 million and we ended up with 9.6 million. So this is what the fund balance looks like at the end of the year. Here's that 9.6 million that you see for the unrestricted fund balance, although that's the unrestricted area. There are restrictions within that. And one of them is our reserve for economic uncertainty, which is 2.2 million. And that's at a 3% reserve. We used to do that at 5%. That's when we had the 5% to be able to do that on a regular basis. And then these other designations, I will show you what that is. This is the unappropriated amount that we have. And then down here is what we have in the restricted fund balance. The total general fund balance is $14 million. And I will show you what this is and what this is later on as we move along. This is a pie chart of exactly the previous screen. So just so that you can see where everything is, here's our reserve for economic uncertainty. Here's our restricted program end balance. So what I'd like to explain to you here is the differences that have occurred from the second interim to the closing. Since then, we've had a decrease in revenues of $727,000 and a decrease in expenditures of 2.6 million and a decrease in contributions to restricted programs of 1.2 million. The decrease in contributions to restricted programs is an increase to our fund balance because we didn't have to give as much support to it. So the total changes since the second interim is $3 million. The revenues did not change very much right here. What the biggest change for the revenues is a decrease in transfers in. So the reason why our revenues are lower is because we didn't have to transfer in the technology reserve or all of the textbook reserve. And you'll see why we didn't have to transfer all that in future slides here. But for the most part, that's the biggest part of the revenues, the difference in revenues. So this number down here matches that previous page, that $727,000 difference. The $2.6 million decrease in expenditures, there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest one, if you'll notice here, it says site carryover of discretionary S&C grant funds as well as donations. Every one of these areas has them except the very last one. Because these are the site carryovers. These represent, of this 2.6 million, this represents 1.3 million of the 2.6 million. So that's site carryovers. In addition to that, you'll see that we have a reduction in subs, per diems, stipends, both with certificated, classified, and then of course the benefits that go with that. Now that is because for the last 3 months of the year, we were in shelter in place. And so we didn't have the substitutes and the per diems and the stipends. A lot of those kind of things went away. And so we ended up saving funds in those areas. the previous page, I told you we didn't need so much from the textbooks. So we had fewer textbook purchases than we anticipated. But one of the bigger things is that we used some CARES Act funds for technology, for the Chromebooks. So we didn't have to use the general fund funds. We could use the restricted CARES Act funds for those. Then also down here in transport, we had less transportation costs because we were in shelter in place. So on the very bottom, this was the only thing that went up in cost, and that was our contribution to the food service. Because we didn't have food, we were serving about 4,200 meals a day. And this went down to about 1,500 meals a day. That's a huge drop in, even though we were able to give out free meals and we were able to get federal funds for it, not as many people, not as many students chose to eat the meals. So we went from 42 to 1,500 per day, but we still had all the same labor because we were still, all of our labor, all of our food service employees, both at the school sites as well as at Central Kitchen, continue to be paid, as we know. And so that was, there's a additional contribution to food service as a result. But all in all, we had $2.6 million less in expenditures since the second interim. And then the final thing on that one chart where things increased and decreased is food service. I mean, not food service, contributions. So the contributions, and the food service one is in a different area, so it doesn't show up here, decreased, and for the most part to special ed. And for special ed purposes, there was a big decrease as usual in county office programs, county office of ed programs, as well as tuitions to other districts, and indirect costs. So we didn't charge as much indirect cost to it. We want to continue to meet what's called the MOE, maintenance of effort, in the future. And so if we don't, we want to try to keep that low for future purposes. So we didn't charge it as much indirect costs. And non-public schools, there was a lot of savings in non-public schools as well. And so the contribution decreased by 1.2 million. This makes up all that $3 million change between the second interim and the unaudited actuals. So if we went back some slides, I said that I would explain things. Here is that $1.3 million in carryovers for the school sites, donation carryovers, site discretionary fund carryovers, and S&C grant fund carryovers. They make up $1.3 million of that reduced spending, as well as the assigned end balance. That other area I said I would go over is the restricted fund balances. So we have $4.4 million in total restricted fund balances. These are the different areas. Of course, we've got the lottery funds, that's a big one, and restricted routine maintenance and repair, which we will be using in the future. I want to point out the one right here, the CARES Act funds. As you see, it's got a negative fund balance. This is where we charge like Chromebooks and some other things to the CARES Act funds, but we have not received funding for it yet. We will be receiving funding for it. And we were not able, the system is not set up for us to be able to have an account receivable for the CARES Act funding. So the county let us know that this is going to be a negative number. We will be getting these funds next year. So grants do not show up in our end fund balance because the revenues of grants are only recognized to the extent that we spend the funds. But there are funds that we didn't spend, and they're not in the fund balance. These are just additional funds, so it's almost $500,000. And these are the areas of which we didn't spend them, and mostly in the title programs. So this is additional information, and this is really important information.
Sorry, can I ask you a question about that?
Absolutely.
What happens with that money that we don't spend?
We carry that over.
Okay.
And what we're not allowed to carry over, we make sure that we find expenditures for it before that happens. So this additional information, I think it's really not about the unaudited actuals. All the previous slides were much more about the unaudited actuals. This is kind of looking forward, looking back and looking forward, but I want to let you know that the changes that you have here, this additional $3 million that we have here since second interim, will be included in the first interim report that you will be having for this year. So when we built the budget basically for the most part on the second interim end numbers, because we didn't have the closing numbers. We don't have the closing numbers until now, right? Until like last week. So this will help our beginning fund balance to be higher, which helps us for the following years. We'll have $3 million more. It'll show up on the second interim. One of the most important things for our district right now, what's hurting us, is our declining enrollment. Since October 2015 to October 2019, we've had 474 fewer students enroll we've lost this many students. And for this year, at this point, as of last Thursday, I believe on the 3rd of September, this year we are down 269 additional students. And I would imagine that a lot has to do with the whole COVID environment, people, distance learning and distance working, remote working. Families are able to remote work. Potentially some families may have moved out of the area, who knows? But we're down 269 students this year. We normally get 1 year of declining enrollment protection. So this year we'd have declining enrollment protection from last year's numbers. But because of the situation, they're going to give us that enrollment protection for 2 years. So we'll experience that protection for this current year, the 2021 year, as well as the 21-22 year, which is great for us. However, eventually, unless enrollment goes back up, and I don't think all of these 269 students are going to be a permanent loss. I think some of them are going to be returning to school when school is in place. But if they don't, there's a cost to us. And in LCFF alone, it's $2.6 million, which we're going to have as a loss of revenues in the 22-23 school year. So that's something we have to consider when moving forward. And at this point, we don't know what the federal and state economy is going to look like in the near future. Given a couple of years, things will come back. But for the next year, 2 years, we have no idea what it's going to look like. As you know, the economy of the state and the federal government, they're really being sucked dry right now for all of the social programs, unemployment, and other things that are being passed on to our citizens. And so it's hard to know what the future, I can't guess what it's going to be. I do feel that in a couple of years, it will reverse. So something that's also important is that we are getting a lot of coronavirus relief funds. We're getting $5.1 million in CARES Act and Prop 98 learning loss mitigation funds. Now those Chromebooks that we had charged last year, that we have that negative balance and that's that $452,000. That's how much of this $5.1 million we've spent so far. So we still have $4.6 million that we will be spending. Most of these funds have to be spent by December 30th of this year. We're working hard on making sure that we can spend as much of those funds as possible in a legal manner. In addition to that, we still have the ESSER funds that are $614,000. These funds, we have more time to spend though. They're funds that will be easier to spend, and we have till September of 2022 to spend these funds. So we're not really focusing on spending these right now. We're really focusing on spending the ones that are that will expire in December. And then what you talked about earlier today, and thank you, Mr. Ali, the Prop 15 split roll tax, should that pass in November, will bring the district at this point between the estimated amount is between 2.1 to $3.7 million annually, which we can really, really use. And that I will be reporting in September on the first interim in December, and I hope to be including these funds in the out years. We'll see what happens, but in any case, that's a really big ticket on the ballot that will really affect school districts and us. So that's it. The last two slides were not really about the second interim. I mean, the unaudited actuals, they are more about moving forward, but I think they were very important to present to you. So in front of you today is really the unaudited actuals. I can answer any questions.
All right, do any board members have any questions? Thank you, Ms. Kessler, by the way.
Thank you.
Looks like there are no questions. So do we have a motion to approve?
I'd like to motion to approve the unaudited actuals as recommended by the administration.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, unanimously approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 13A, Board Policies, Administrative Regulations. Board Policies, Administrative Regulations, May 2020, CSBA Board Policy Revisions, second reading. The board will review and revise board policies and administrative regulations from May 2020 CSBA Board Policy Revisions as stated in a second reading. Do we have any comments or a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the second reading of Board Policy Administrative Regulations from the May 2020 CSB Board Policy Revisions as stated.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And it is unanimously approved. Item 14, persons wishing to address the board on unagendized or closed session items. This portion of the agenda is available for individuals to comment on or address the board on any issue that is under the board's jurisdiction and not on the agenda. Please submit speaker card The maximum time allowed for any speaker is usually 2 minutes. And do we have any for this item?
No, there are no speaker cards submitted.
All right, great. Item 15, governance team member comments, reports, and board meeting reflection. And we will start with Superintendent Vidales.
Yeah, I felt like all four of the guidelines I tried to adhere to. I'm going to continue to work on being concise. That's one where I can use some support.
All right. Trustee Koo.
Similarly, all four, but I would say first one, focus on best interest for our students.
And Trustee Anoa'i.
I too will embrace all of the 4 guidelines that we continue to promote. And I would just want to say that I really miss sitting at board meetings next to you guys and feeling the energy of connectedness. But I'm very proud of the work that we're still able to do through this platform. But I, like many, definitely miss the energy to be able to sit with you guys in the same room. But while this is sufficient to get the work done, I just want to say thank you to everyone that continues to make sure that we do business as best as we can.
All right. And Trustee Brizuela.
Well, I'm glad that we had the discussions that we had this evening, which is great. And I look forward to more information and more things that we can do to make everybody feel as welcomed as they can be, and that they all feel honored and respected. That's the one thing I think that everybody has to remember is respect, smile, and give a hand to help. Because I think people want to be included. They want to join a group, but maybe they're afraid to do so. So we need to be able to bring more people in. And that's how they do with children. You bring the children all together. And when you go to the schools and see them, they're really pretty awesome. You know, they stick up for each other. They love each other. They're just really great. And that must mean that some of the parents' influence is why they're that way. And then I want to give praise also to our teachers. It's a hard job. I think Shaquille knows that because he's a teacher. It's not an easy job to make every single person feel equally important. But we're doing a good job. I'm really proud of our district. And I think we can do a whole lot more, and we're going to get those ethnic studies stuff going where everybody wants to be part of it, no matter who they are. They all want to be part of it. Because that's the only way we're going to make everybody work together, is to learn together. So I look forward to that. With that, I'm going to say, we had a long night.
All right. So thanks everyone for all of your comments. And I just want to say, yeah, Ms. Brizuela, you've been consistent all these years with your advocacy for inclusion and making sure that every student feels welcome and special. I've never heard you say anything different. So thank you for always keeping that message out there. And I will also agree that, you know, I'm in agreement with all 4 of the guidelines and that we followed them all this evening. And for a change, I don't believe we're ending the meeting in honor of anyone. So,
Mr. Ali, we do have some names.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have the names. So.
I can read them for you.
All right.
We have 4 names today. We have Benjamin Davis, who is a former director of classified personnel. We have Mary Helen Nightingale, who was a retired instructional assistant and special education aide at Christopher Columbus School. We have Judy Wargo, retired food service field coordinator and bookkeeper. She was also the food service assistant at Daniel Webster School, a clerk typist and library assistant at TR Policita, and school secretary at Christopher Columbus. And lastly, we would like to close in memory of Jasoda Chandra, mother of Abhay Chand, our retired director of fiscal services.
All right, so we will take a 5-minute, 5-minute break, and then we'll convene to close session.
It will still be in this room, so don't turn off anything? Just turn off your camera and then come back in 5.
Oh, so there's no other link. I got you.
Yeah.
All right, so just pause.
Okay, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
See y'all later.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
So we'll convene at 9:01.